To our next speaker, Katy Lock from the Town and Country Planning Association. Katy is a Garden Cities and New Towns advocate. So I'm always talking about advocacy and planning, so I'm really pleased that you've got that title. It's quite unusual. You're a chartered town planner and background in urban design and sustainability, and you previously worked for an environmental consultancy. So I'd like to welcome you to talk about.
Thank you very much.
The topic.
Can you put my 50-word synopsis up there? I don't need to do my presentation, you can just read that. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to come and speak to you here in Sheffield. Before I get on to answering the question about where will our grandchildren live, I am just going to tell you a bit about the Town and Country Planning Association. We're not allowed to leave the office unless we come back with at least 3 new members. So I'm just going to bear with me a second while I tell you a bit about what we do. The TCPA campaigns for the reform of the UK's planning system to make it more responsive to people's needs and aspirations and to promote sustainable development. We occupy a unique position overlapping with those involved in the development industry, the environmental movement and those concerned with social justice. We pride ourselves on leading-edge radical thinking and problem-solving. And as you can see here, our objectives are to secure a decent, well-designed home for everyone, empower people and communities to influence the decisions that affect them, and improve the planning system in accordance with sustainable development. We're cross-party, we're cross-sector, we have around 1,000 members from across the built and natural environment sectors. We have no core funding, we are a charity, we rely on income from our members and from projects, so please do join us and support us. We have leading edge work on all sorts of issues, planning and health, sustainable energy planning in UK and Europe, climate change, good infrastructure, planning and poverty, and of course garden cities, which incorporates all of those issues I've just mentioned. Now back to the question, where will our grandchildren live? Well, TCPA was founded in 1899 to promote the garden city movement, and really addressing the question, where will our grandchildren live, is something we've been doing for the past 110 years. Our founder, Ebenezer Howard, and his supporters, Howard wrote in 1898, "Tomorrow a peaceful path to real reform." And that set out his concept of the garden city. He was influenced by the cooperative movement, philanthropic industrialists, radical thinkers that preceded him and who were also his contemporaries. And he crafted his idea of the garden city in the context of what was happening then at the turn of the century. We had really polluted, overcrowded cities in the countryside. We had a real lack of industry as everyone had flocked to the cities for work. And Howard's idea was to combine the best parts of that town life, so the employment opportunities, transport networks and social networks, with the best elements of the countryside, fresh air, access to nature, space to grow food. By combining those two magnets, those two pulls in one new place, a new garden city, it'd be possible to provide quality homes in well-planned, healthy communities, all underpinned by a system of participative governance. But Howard was a practical utopian, and what was really revolutionary about his idea was not just the importance he attached to good planning, but that his model included practical ways of both playing for development and for giving the community a stake and a share in where they live. His ideas incorporated planning, design, economics, sociology, and environmentalism. So fast forward to 2014, what is the relevance of the garden cities in the 21st century? Well, there's no doubt that the emphasis of the garden city movement, the garden city principles and high quality environments for everyone backed by a fair development model is absolutely relevant in addressing today's housing crisis. We've already heard some of the scary statistics today, and just to add to that, we need 240,000 new homes every year and we are building less than half that. Meanwhile, we have 1.8 million people on the waiting list for social housing. And we believe that the new garden city is an essential part of a whole portfolio of solutions that we need to address that crisis. It's of such a scale that we can't meet our needs on a plot-by-plot basis alone. And garden cities, new communities, holistically planned, provide opportunities and economies of scale to really embed sustainable principles to really get us where we need to be. And thirdly, history has shown that new communities, properly planned and underpinned by land value capture, are good for the economy, good for society, and good for growth. But while meeting housing needs is a principal concern and one of the great benefits of the Garden City approach and that whole portfolio of solutions, another thing that's great about them is that because they're holistically planned, they also assist in all of the other challenges that many of the other challenges that we're facing today: climate change, health, the need for innovation in design, local food production, and all of these things, again, set in this context of participative governance. So what is the 21st century Garden City? Well, you will have hopefully heard a lot about the Garden City principles. They're enshrined in a national planning policy framework and more recently in the Coalition's locally led Garden Cities prospectus made reference to the TCPA's Garden City principles. They are set out here. Sorry it's so wordy, but there's a lot to include in here. These are the distillation of the key elements that we think have made the Garden City model so successful, and we've articulated them in a 21st century context, updated them for today. But what's really interesting about these principles is you would recognise most of them as the fundamental elements of any sustainably planned place today. Accessible transport systems, ensuring it's climate resilient, imaginative design, local jobs, mixed tenure homes, etc. But what really sets the Garden City model apart are those top three principles, so that land value capture for the benefit of the community, the vision leadership and community engagement, and the long-term stewardship of assets. And what's another thing to realise about these principles is that this is not, we want people to be really innovative and creative in the application of these principles. They are forward-looking. We are not looking to recreate Letchworth Garden City in the 21st century. This is a new context, and we want people to be really innovative addressing the issues that we're facing today. Ultimately, the Garden City principles are really just a framework for good planning. Because they can meet housing needs in a highly sustainable way, making use of those opportunities of large-scale development and those economies of scale, they're vital elements in the wider drive to address the housing crisis. But they are only one of a whole portfolio of solutions we need. It's crucial that we, in order to tackle the housing crisis, we continue the task of urban regeneration and the renewal of our existing towns and cities. And in going back to the principles, our work has shown how those principles can actually be applied to that task as well. That just proves that it is just a framework for good planning. So how are we going to make this a reality? How do we think we can make this a reality to really provide the homes that we need and those homes where we hope our grandchildren will live? Through the work we've been undertaking the last 3 years, we have shown that actually the current local plan process we've got does provide some opportunity to bring forward new communities along Garden City principles. That's possible by addressing some of these 5 key areas for action we've noted here. We need brave political leadership, we need cooperative planning, and a really long-term view that transcends political cycles in the absence of strategic planning. We need new approaches to risk and reward, to de-risk development for investment. And we need access to the right land in the right place at the right price, and there are different ways of cooperative working to make that happen. By encouraging long-term patient investment from the public and private sectors, and by ensuring there are dedicated teams to deliver new communities that have the skills to make it happen. So there is some good news. There are some large-scale developments coming through. We still work with our New Communities group on some of those developments, which were initially first wave eco-towns, and first one, Bicester, actually started building just a few weeks ago. So things are moving. But really today, in the planning system we've got, and with the absence of strategic planning or any level of larger than local planning, we're really not going to get the scale of development that we really need to make a real difference. We're operating in the context of a planning system that's absolutely on its knees. Not only is there no strategic planning, we're building the smallest homes in Europe, we've got continued deregulation and permitted development, which is frankly out of control. Planning by appeal, which is leading to continuous small piecemeal housing development without any real comprehensive approach to planning. What we really need is a properly planned programme to deliver garden cities across the country, and not just in the southeast, which the current government seems interested in. We need to consider the needs of the country as a whole to really get where we need to be. But we've been here before. We had that graph started off in 1946, and that's in no doubt because in 1946 the New Towns Act was passed, which led to the development of 32 new towns across the United Kingdom, which today our current research shows provide homes for over 2.7 million people. And today we need to capture the spirit and ambition of this post-war movement to deliver the homes we need. Of course, we need to learn the lessons from this. We didn't get it right at all in any respect, not in total, but obviously, we need to learn the lessons of what we've done before, good and bad. And going forward, I'm currently working on research into those transferable lessons from the New Towns programme to really understand what we need to take forward with the new programme. We're clear that modern garden cities should be predicated on a fusion of the very high social and environmental standards of the garden cities movement, but with the highly effective delivery mechanisms of the post-war new towns, combining the best of both approaches and learning the lessons of the past and what has worked and what has not. And if we're serious about making this happen, this is 240,000 new homes every year, and that is accumulating as we do not build every year, as every year goes on. A new government, whatever colour that is, if they really want to make a difference, they need to make a difference in the first few months they are in power. And we have been looking at how we might do that in terms of legislation. The New Towns Act is still actually on the statute books. It was last consolidated in 1981. And our research has shown that actually the architecture of it is broadly sound. Development corporations are effective delivery mechanisms. Long-term patient investment from the states can still have positive returns. But the legislation does require modernisation. Development corporations need transparent legal objectives to bring them in line with sustainable development objectives. We need real enhanced requirements for public participation in the process. We need enhanced partnership working. And importantly, and this is one of the things that we really did get wrong with the New Towns programme first time round, was that there was no provision put in place for the long-term stewardship of those assets once the New Towns development corporations were wound up. So where are we now? There's been lots and lots of talk about garden cities and new towns in the last few months. We've been leading our campaign for the last 3 years, and it's been really interesting to see how that political momentum has gathered pace and to see where the parties are going with it now. For the first time in a generation, we've got cross-party support for a new generation of garden cities. But the question of really how to deliver them in high-quality, comprehensively planned new communities, which can take over 30 years to deliver and transcend electoral cycles, has not really been properly addressed at the national level yet. And this is because it involves the difficult and politically sensitive issues of consent, land value and compensation, and ensuring high standards of development within environmental limits. The Labour Party's Lions Housing Review, published just last week, calls on government to immediately recommend a new programme of garden cities and has begun to consider some of these difficult issues of land value and site allocation. Meanwhile, earlier this year we had the locally led Garden Cities prospectus published by the Coalition, which invites bids for locally led garden cities of 15,000 homes or more. We are not aware of any sites currently in planning that get anywhere near that scale, and it's really not clear how this process will work with existing planning processes. There's no strategic approach or additional funding or really much clarity on the process. So to meet the objectives in that prospectus, that it's really going to be, no doubt that is going to be challenging. We are assisting government in any way we can to help them work out how they're going to do that. But it's clear that significant policy challenges remain, primarily around the balance between centrally designated new town sites and local consensus in the context of localism. All the parties seem to sort of be saying the same thing about that at the moment. No one's gone any further in one particular direction. And at the moment, we're exploring some of those practicalities of how to make new garden cities a reality, from the detailed financial models and locational criteria to ensuring economic and climate resilience. We're going to be publishing later this year the first of a series of worksheets. The first will be looking at actually how we determine where new garden cities might be located and what are the different roles of different levels of governance in that process, and we'll be publishing that in the coming months. Now, I'm going to draw this to a close now, but as we're in Sheffield, I thought I would leave you with a picture of Raymond Unwin, who was born just a few miles from here in Rotherham and spent much of his academic and working life here in Sheffield. And he was, of course, one of the pioneers of the Garden City movement. He fought high for high standards in architecture and planning, architecture and design. And at a time when planning's on its knees and the standards, as in Unwin's time, are being constantly challenged, we can learn a lot from the Garden City movement. We have, although it's not clear how some of the differences in the way the parties are going to move forward with their objectives for garden cities, the fact that we have this cross-party endorsement for garden cities is really a golden opportunity. We need to be really positive and help in any way we can. It's a real opportunity for the entire sector to adopt the guiding principles of the garden city movement, because, and that guiding principle is cooperation. More than ever, the nation needs the wider development community, government and communities to approach the housing crisis in a new spirit of responsibility and innovation if we're really going to get places which are going to stand the test of time and really deserve the accolade of garden cities. And I'll leave it there.